Honourable Mr Speaker, I rise to support the bill to a select committee at this stage, pending further revisions as a result of the select committee process to broaden the mandate of the bill and to bring it further into line with the Australian Productivity Commission. Mr Speaker, this is a government bill. The establishment of a Productivity Commission was part of the Confidence and Supply Agreement with ACT, and I would like to acknowledge from the outset the healthy consultation that has occurred with the Minister, the Honourable Rodney Hyde, and through him with the Minister, the Honourable Bill English. And I'd like to commend the leadership of my colleague, the Honourable Leanne Dalzell, who spoke earlier, who has had significant experience in this area and has made a major contribution already to the evolution of thinking. Mr Speaker, in my brief remarks today, I'd like to recap on the areas that there is substantial bipartisan agreement around the issue of productivity and the need for a commission. And I'd then like to outline some of the areas where we need to do a little more work to establish consensus that would enable the opposition to support the bill at second and third readings. Let me begin at the highest level by saying the Labour opposition fully agrees with government parties that productivity is an absolutely crucial issue to take New Zealand forward. There can be, I think, no economically literate person who could disagree with the proposition that productivity is, over time, one of the most crucial drivers of our economic performance. Second point I think that we agree upon is that the concept of having a productivity commission that is well-resourced, that brings together some of the best academic brains and business experience and is well-staffed, that is empowered to take a long-term view, has a strategic perspective, and in so doing is above day-to-day politics. I think that there is broad agreement around the House that that would be an extremely welcome addition to the country's economic architecture and would be in potentially the public interest. That, sir, is potentially a very good thing. And we would stress the importance of the breadth of the mandate, the long-term strategic view, the independence of a commission from the government of the day, and importantly, the fact that it must be able to work off a full and proper definition of productivity. Sir, let me now come to some areas where I think there remains work to be done to establish agreement. And at the most fundamental level, sir, I believe it turns upon the respective definitions of productivity that are employed across the House. Now, the classical definition, I think the Minister and I would agree, it comes from the old Economics 101 or 102 Cobb-Douglas production function for the aficionados there, is that productivity is a function. Now, thank you, Mr Gilmore, I'm glad someone remembers it. Aaron wrote it, sorry, Mr Speaker, if I might withdraw and apologise for an omission. It was the Cobb-Douglas-Gilmore production function and so ably associated with the Honourable Tim Grosser, who wrote the first corollary to it. And we appreciate the esteemed input of those giants upon whose shoulders the government now stands. But back to the point. Cobb-Douglas says productivity is a function of capital, skills that lead to a thing called multi-factor productivity, and technology. In other words, a broad and holistic view is required, and the New Zealand Treasury and the Ministry of Economic Development on a good day agree with that and extend it to include entrepreneurship and the use of natural resources, particularly important for an agricultural-based economy like New Zealand. And we think that that is perfectly fair, reasonable and sensible, and that there is a literature which goes back a long way now and a strong evidential base that can allow us to have a good evidence-based bipartisan discussion about what is good for New Zealand. And the same broad conception as the Honourable Leanne Dalzell has read out from the Australian legislation is exactly what underlies the Australian Productivity Commission. If I might just again quote from the Commission's legislative instructions: improve the productivity and economic performance of the economy, reduce unnecessary regulation, encourage the development of efficient and competitive Australian industries. So it's got an industry focus. Facilitate adjustment to structural change, recognise the interest of the community, promote regional employment and development, have regard to international commitments, and do it in ecologically sustainable ways. That is big picture thinking, and it reflects the full range of the factors that are internalised in the Cobb-Douglas-Gilmore production function. Sir, I cannot help but point out that stands in sharp contrast to the opening speech by the Minister, Bill English. And Mr English, in his remarks, talked about three functions of the Commission, and Sir, I lament the fact that all three were couched in terms of deregulation. Now, regulation and deregulation is a bit like having a hedge. You need a hedge to keep the barbarians out or down sometime, but you want to prune the hedge so it doesn't overgrow the garden. I mean, that's regulation in a nutshell. And we agree with the fact you've got to keep pruning the hedge, otherwise the good old civil service has a tendency to add layers. That's bipartisan, sir. But what is not bipartisan is to take that a step further, get the balance wrong, and say that the primary, let alone entire, function of a productivity commission is to be some kind of razor gang or against red tape in disguise. And I note, sir, that the ACT Party was not able to get its regulatory razor gang up in another context. And I believe well enough of the Minister Rodney Hyder. I'm prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'm prepared to go into this process with my colleagues believing that he has an open mind, will read the literature, will listen to the submissions, so will Bill English, and that working together for the good of New Zealanders, this Parliament will come up with a commission and legislation that is above day-to-day politics, that puts the long-term national interest first, that picks the best out of the Australian model, that takes the best lessons from the literature, including the third volume of the Thoughts According to Aaron Gilmore, or was it Lord Maynard Keynes? I get the two mixed up. I think it was volume 3 of Gilmore. Sir, I believe we must do this outreach. If we liked, Keynes was better looking, but Gilmore was more famous. And we are truly honoured that he has sought to grace this chamber with his presence today for this debate. And Sir Aaron, as no doubt he will soon be known to all, we appreciate your condescension, sir, to coming to the House on this, and only regret that your colleague, Sir Timothy, is not able to similarly grace the chamber today. But I know that you speak for both and that you taught him everything that he once knew. Sir, summing up, this is a potentially very important step forward for New Zealand. And there's a degree, sir, those listening at home will note that there's a degree of levity and good humour in the House because MPs, contrary to public opinion, actually enjoy the opportunity to agree with each other on some things. You know, we're not actually hired killers. We don't come to Wellington simply to run each other down. Across the House, we actually do want to put the national interest first and do what's right for New Zealand. It's just that sometimes we disagree about how to get there. Now, here's the opportunity, Mr. Speaker and New Zealanders, for Parliament actually to agree on something that's bigger than politics. Because we're 3/4 of the way there already. We agree on the nature of the problem. We agree on most of the definition of what productivity is. We agree on the potential advantages of having a bipartisan, multi-partisan, enduring commission that rises above the day-to-day and can do the mahi. That is good news. And all we've got to agree on now, essentially, is the balance between the functions of the Commission. And I'm prepared to go into that select committee with my colleagues, believing that wisdom will prevail, the democratic process will hear from submissioners, and that the government will go to Cabinet with an open mind, willing to listen to those submissions. But, sir, I do offer this word of caution to the government, that if this is not that good faith process, and if the consultation that we have valued is not honoured by a fair and balanced assessment of those submissions, and if the Cabinet does not listen to the best of the literature and the best of those submissions and show good faith on further revisions, then the opposition will sadly, more in sadness than anger, not be able to support this bill through to second and third reading. And like my colleague, I hope that won't be the case. I hope we can reach out across the chamber and do something that's patently good for New Zealand and put the national interest ahead of politics. Thank you, sir.